Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It's 3:31 p.m. I'm calling this meeting of Maple Broadband Executive Committee to order for the 26th of January, 2026. The first item on the agenda is to approve the agenda as distributed. I'll entertain a motion to approve. Moved by Nancy, second from Cy. Would anyone like to make any edits to the agenda? Okay, hearing none. All in favor, raise your hand or say aye. Okay, and that's all of you. Next up is approval of the minutes from January 12th. I'll entertain a motion to approve those.
So moved.
Okay, second from Cy. Are there any edits to the minutes? Okay, hearing none. All in favor, raise your hand or say aye. Okay, that's all of you that's in attendance. Public comments. Would anyone like to make a public comment? Okay, hearing none. Over to Steve for the chair report.
And my chair report, actually I got two items. One I think I know the answer to. Nancy and I were communicating on this about communicating with the towns about identifying a delegate. I think it sounded like you were ready to do that. I don't think you need to do it yet, do you? It needs to be done by when, March or April?
You're muted.
You're muted.
The appointments need to happen in April, so.
Right, we wait until the town meetings are over so we know who the town clerks really are in case they have been changed. And then I write letters to the town clerks. It's usually the town clerks, it isn't always that case. And let them know what, to remind them, to remind the select boards to make those appointments.
Okay. Perfect. Ellie, do we want to do anything about Whiting and, getting them to identify a non-Whiting delegate as part of this process, or we'll attack that separately? Thoughts?
I mean, it wouldn't hurt for Nancy's communication to give the town the option, because they probably don't know that they have it, that if they're not able to find a delegate in the town, they could consider approaching one of the adjacent towns to ask if that delegate would be willing to represent their town as well.
It sounds like maybe we want to tweak the boilerplate that Nancy's been using to capture that.
Yeah. And it also seems to me, I mean, the politics here is a little bit funny, but like some delegates are better at showing up than other delegates. I mean, we've had some delegates who were appointed and have not shown up once. And I kind of feel like it would be nice to have the towns be aware of the attendance record or lack thereof. Like I don't quite know how to be politically correct in this, but like it's a problem when you have delegates who are appointed and don't show up. That hurts our quorum. Like they really shouldn't do that.
What we've done in the past, Ellie, is just send you have to do the work. You have to make up a delegate form, but just send a form saying, here's how many meetings they attended.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Without necessarily saying anything.
Yep. You could do that. Nancy?
Well, in terms of Whiting and Panton, what I'd rather do is see if we use the usual boilerplate that we use with all the town clerks for this year with them. And then if we don't get anyone, I would be happy to call those town clerks and talk to them rather than do it by email.
Yeah, I think that's probably fine for them. I'm thinking more of the towns that have appointed people and have no bloody idea that people aren't showing up. Right?
Well,
because that actually does hurt our quorum, and it would really be good for that status quo not to continue.
Yeah, I know that's true of Lincoln, right?
Orwell, I think Salisbury's rep has come once. I mean, yeah. So we'd have to do the homework and have a look. Steve?
Yeah.
Yeah. My concern, I don't think it's a simple process to do what Ellie's describing. And I think it is going to be miscommunicated verbally. It has to be written down.
I kind of like Adam's idea. I mean, we just do it as a standard thing for every single town, right? So we're not singling anyone out. I mean, Panton and Whiting is a different story because they haven't appointed a delegate all year. So I think that one could be a nice, polite phone call to the new town clerk to say, hey, we understand it's really hard to find people in small towns, and here's something that you may not have been aware of, right? Or we're going to send you a letter that says as much. And please, 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 can you try? Because this is important for our quorum. Per the statute, we need to have more than 50%. And that, if you're not represented, it counts against us, right? And then, and then for all the other towns, we could say, here's the attendance record of your delegate and alternate. And they can make their own inferences from that.
So is it 2 communications then? It's Nancy's standard, and then maybe a week later or something like that, or whenever we send out a table, because I could do that. It's just basically look at every single governing board meeting for the last year, and put an X in a box, and it's done in no time. I'm happy to do that, or unless somebody else would be willing to take it on. It's really not that time consuming. It's 12 documents. So,
Nancy?
I think that if we're soliciting new delegates from the towns that don't have them, or wanting the existing delegates who aren't coming to come, I think it would be most effective to be clear with those town clerks or those delegates about what are the benefits to their town of their being at our meetings. I mean, us having a quorum isn't much motivation for anybody, really. But if I think maybe people don't fully understand what it will do for the people in their town if they are well informed about our work.
I disagree, Nancy, but respectfully, I think it. I want to take emotion out of it. We're doing awesome things for Addison County. Awesome. We're spending millions of dollars building network. Anybody who doesn't know that, we don't need to tell them about how important it is. They should be aware of it. We're doing amazing things here.
But of course, we know it. We've been sitting here.
Yep.
And that's what we have. That's what we have London Middlebury for. They're working on that. I'm sure when Ellie gets to it, she'll talk about that. But you'll see what's happening. It's not passive.
And also, I'm looking here at the delegate and alternate participation policy. I seem to have a draft up, but I imagine whatever we passed was pretty similar. If people who are not coming to a majority of the meetings are in violation of the policy that the board itself adopted. So it's basically, it's sort of like an ethics thing. Like if you're going to be appointed to something, you should show up. And if you're not going to do it, you should get yourself off and find someone else. You're not entirely wrong, Nancy. It wouldn't hurt to be not just about us, but this is how this works. Like the governance of our district comes from our towns. It's a two-way street. We're doing things for them. They should be represented, but they also shouldn't, appoint someone who's not going to show up and affect our quorum. Lynn's got her hand up, so I want to let her talk because maybe she can't see us.
Down to 6. I can see all of you. My computer, the one that I'm on right now, was upgraded, and this is like I just fired it up. And for some reason, Teams won't let me use my camera. I have to do some setup, but I'm not going to figure that out right now. So, but I am here, and a question I had, and this is to do with the conversation that you're all having. The representative from Salisbury, when I first came on, it was Paul Vasey.
Mm-hmm.
And if he's still the representative, he doesn't even live in the country anymore. He moved to Canada.
He's not. They've handed Sue Mackey, and she finally made it to one meeting.
All right. So anyway, I just was bringing that up because maybe part of this is just figuring out, do those people still live in the town that, is there any connection between the town clerk and the people who've said they'd be on this? I don't know. Is there a connection there?
Every town's probably different.
Yeah.
Well, it shouldn't be up to us because we want to be governed by our towns, I think, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's a little bit dangerous to start cherry picking board members. Although I guess I'm the only staff member, but for you other board members, you can start cherry picking. But we need people who are going to show up.
Yeah,
that's what we need.
And yeah. I agree with you there should be something, you know, like, is there a policy if people don't show up after a certain number of times?
Well, but if we kick them off, then we don't have a delegate, so we're even worse off than we were to begin with. But I mean, this, like,
Yeah.
you know, it does come back down to the communications of the towns and like, what's the expectation, what's the impact, right?
This is, folks, this is really important, and I think we need to spend some time with this. Ellie,
Yep.
I think we need to put it on the agenda for our next meeting and keep talking about it. Because I think at that point, for example, I can put together the attendance list that we were talking about, and I'll float that out to everyone, and then hopefully we can make some decisions at the next meeting. I think, but there's a lot on the agenda, and I've got one other thing I have to talk about, and I'm going to do it right now. So, is that okay with everyone if we move on?
I just have a question. Do we want to talk about that in the next executive committee or the next governing board, or both?
I think it's an executive committee item personally. What do you guys think?
Because we have an executive committee before governing board on the week after next. We have the 9th, and then the next day is governing board. But it may make sense to put this on the governing board agenda so that we can tell the governing board what we're talking about and get
figure
their
out what we're
feedback.
going to do, and then we tell them at that meeting. Perfect.
Okay, great. I'm going to do that.
All right. So, downloads. It's not there. I thought I just downloaded. Hold on a minute. I had this all set up, and then, oh boy. Let's try it this way. Downloads. Quote. Okay. So, as we'll probably tell you more about if we have time, we're working aggressively with our engineering firm, and we've made sufficient progress that we know what we need for our electronics in our network. And for those of you who haven't been here for the duration, when we first decided had to proceed to buy network electronics, and electronics have to be consistent across whatever we build. So we have to pick one product basically and then deploy it repeatedly. And so we went through a competitive process, and Calix was in the bidding, and there were one or two others, and I can't remember their names. That's too long ago for me, but yeah.
It's Adtran and something else.
Yeah. And we went through everything with using our then network engineer managing the process, and we, through competitive bid, awarded the work to Calix. And Calix is also the equipment manufacturer used by WCVT, and it's the same network hardware that's used by NEK-CV. So basically, that was one of the drivers for how we went with this. It's basically because we can't put a non-Calix product in and then have it served by WCVT. We're just kind of driven by necessity. So we've gone through this process in years past, and here we are again, preparing to hope, fingers crossed, getting BEAD money and building out a lot more network. And so with the assistance of JSI, we identified enough details that we approached Calix and said, give us a quote. And so they gave us a quote. This is a quote for Middlebury, and then I'm scroll down in a minute and you'll see the part number C is down at the bottom here, which is there's a total at the bottom. So we got a separate quote for Middlebury, and that's it. And there's a caveat in there, and I'm sure if I don't say it real fast, Ellie's going to jump on me. But and then here is the Ripton one, and here's the total for that, and the total is $93,193. And so the funny thing about this, and what we are looking at, is that these numbers are BEAD numbers. There's pricing differs between BEAD and non-BEAD. And so what we actually got from Calix was four quotes, basically. 2 BEAD quotes for Middlebury and Ripton, and then 2 non-BEAD quotes for Middlebury and Ripton. So we now have 4 quotes, and I just pulled in the information we need to decide what we're going to do. But I think the key here is that, as an example, for Middlebury, if we bought everything bead, it's $70,418.60. And if we buy it with all non-bead money, it's going to cost us about $61,900. So big delta. And so wisely, Ellie wants to have us basically, let's buy all the bead that we have to. We'll buy the electronics we have to in order to be compliant. But anything that is not, in delivering service to non-bead subscribers, and there's quite a few of them as the research I've been doing, we'll be doing it differently. So it's just going to make it kind of confusing. And I'm going to have to figure out how to communicate this to Calix, because what we want from them is quotes broken up in that way so that we can optimize what we are buying, but also not have to spend a penny more than we have to using more expensive bead stuff. So I think you'll go ahead.
It's the same stuff. The non-bead stuff and the bead stuff is the same stuff.
Yeah, and
they're doing it because they can.
It's I think it's not just this, but it's mostly BABA, Build America, Buy America. This is a condition of the bead.
Yeah.
And so there is some compliance required. I assume, Ellie, that there's some compliance that is necessary in order to receive that certification, and that's the cost to do it. But I guess the end goal, though, right? The end goal is to make it all American made. Nothing wrong with that.
Well, I mean, to be clear, ARPA had the BABA requirements as well. There's just additional requirements that the details of which are not immediately in my head, and so I'm not going to start talking about things I don't know about. But there's bead requirements that are different than ARPA requirements, and to the degree that there's a price difference, they can charge differently for equipment that's manufactured domestically than somewhere else, which makes sense. Their costs are higher. Or even if it's the same thing, but they have to go through like more rubber stamping process to certify that it's the right thing, that also costs them more.
But if we buy at the non-bead price, will we be able to use it on bead?
We are not allowed to do that.
So I guess I don't understand what you're suggesting.
Well, so in the same cabinet, we're going to be serving. So think about the town of Middlebury. There's a bunch of addresses, I don't know how many off the top of my head, that are in our bead application that are either eligible under bead or they are served addresses that we said we would serve as part of this application under the rules that was accepted. So according to bead, we can serve all of those addresses and pay for it out of the bead grant. But along there's something in bead which is called a middle mile, which is where if we pass a whole, again, think of Middlebury. There's a lot of cable in there. There's a lot of fiber in there already. So to the degree that we're, for example, going up and down Route 7 to connect the unserved part of the north of Middlebury down down to the Middlebury hub and then down south again, east over to get to Ripton, there's a lot of served addresses on there that we're not allowed to serve with bead. So we can put up the fiber to connect them all. And then with separate money, we can put up the distribution fiber and splicing to be able to serve those customers, which of course we would logically do because it's going to help our business case to do that. But we can't pay for that out of the same bucket of money. We're not allowed to. So this is simply part of the complexity that we have to handle in doing this project, is that we're buying a bunch of things and we're going to pay for them separately. And the within the electronics hub, it's the exact same thing, right? And to your point, Nancy, like when people from Waitsfield are going to plug in a customer, they're not going to like plug it into this, this port for bead and this port for non-bead. It's the same thing, but we have to have the financial procedures to prove that we haven't charged things to the grant that we haven't. So what Steve is talking about is the back-end paperwork that enables us to demonstrate this is why we've charged this unit to the bead grant versus this other thing in the event that we're ever audited. Now, it's a fixed amount subaward, so theoretically we should never be audited, but if anyone says that, they have a reason to believe there's an impropriety, and also we need to do it right because that's the rules of the grant, right? So we need to do it right. We need to have all the paperwork to back it up, and especially in this case where we're trying to do one project that's paid for out of two separate pots of money, it's super important that we have the right information up front, because trying to retrofit that in would be literally impossible. Well, maybe not impossible. It would be extremely expensive.
So isn't the safest thing to buy the bead based on the bead quote?
We could still do that. We'd be paying a little bit more per unit, but we still have to keep track of how many we're charging to the bead grant versus another. Because in our books, every single invoice, we say how we're paying for it.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure that we upload the bead invoice to the bead class and the non-bead invoice to whichever other class we're using to pay for that. So you may as well be paying a cheaper rate if you can get a cheaper rate for the same unit.
If that's acceptable under BEAD.
Well, we're not paying for it out of BEAD, so it doesn't matter what's acceptable.
Okay.
This is another thing. I think. Well, let's hope Nancy. Yeah, anybody else besides Nancy have any further thoughts on this? Because I think we need to move on. I think I'm going to make a motion.
Let me just clarify. You're saying that it would be acceptable under BEAD to use equipment that we purchased with other funds that fulfill, no.
Look at it this way. We need 1,000 widgets. We know that 700 of them we have to do BEAD process for. And so we have to buy those at the more expensive price. The other 300 we can buy at the cheaper price. And it's just a matter of figuring out what are the 300, what are the 700.
Okay, all right.
Other discussion items? Any questions? Any other questions? All right. So my only thought on this before I make this motion, Ellie, is that the total, if everything we're buying was all BEAD, it would be 93 and 193. Do we want to go more than that? Is there a possibility we're going to want to add more hardware or something like that? I think it's almost going to be that regardless.
Well, Steve, I don't think, are you suggesting we make a procurement now? Because I don't think we should be procuring anything until we actually have a BEAD award.
Well, my thinking there is that we could cancel the PO, right? BEAD evaporates, we issue them a PO, and then we don't have, after we've issued up our PO, we discover that BEAD has vanished and we cancel the PO. So I don't know why we shouldn't, at a minimum, let's put it this way, we don't even need to do that. What I want to do is I want to gather perfect Calyx quotes and sit on them, right? And then as soon as the money, we know we're good, then the PO hits. So there's no reason we can't do everything. And so I guess part of this is to cross this threshold now. Let's get the approval now. And that way, when the time comes, it's just, a formality.
The quotes are probably time limited, aren't they?
No,
they're not.
Everything we've done so far has not had a time flag on it. We're going to have issues with that with some other stuff we're doing. And I think that's part of what we have to be careful about. And that's part of what we have to plan, because there's some things that are going to have super long lead times. We have to order them early. There's a lot of stuff that we're just going to have to wait on. So that's kind of figuring out what to do and when we can do it. But
yeah, because the other wrinkle here is in the event that BEAD does evaporate, which I really don't think is likely. But in the event BEAD does evaporate, we would need to redo the quotes, because we'd still need to be buying blades for the Middlebury hub, because we'd still want to build that, but with ARPA money.
Yeah.
So are you maybe suggesting that we take a vote on an up to amount using as if it's all BEAD? Is that what you're saying?
I think we're suggesting that, you authorize me and Steve to procure up to this amount.
Yes.
And leave it up to us to figure out to what grant we charge it. But it's because that's not part of what the executive committee anyway approves. You approve the procurement, and we figure out how we pay for it.
Okay.
All right. So I'm making a motion that we approve developing a quotation for Calyx hardware for Middlebury and Ripton in the total amount of $93,193. Is there a second? Thanks, Nancy. Discussion?
I think what you want is to have the executive committee authorize you and me to issue a purchase order for up to an amount that's higher than what we're talking about.
Okay, but we're not going to. Okay, we're not going to issue the PO, but we need to get the paperwork in front to do that. Okay, got it. I'm making a motion.
The idea. Yeah.
I move that we authorize Ellie and to issue a purchase order for Calyx hardware for Middlebury and Ripton in the total amount of $93,193. Is there a second? Uh-oh. I think Nancy's frozen. Okay, we got one from Shannon. Okay, good. All right, we got a second from Shannon. Discussion. All right, all in favor, raise your hand or say aye. Wunderbar. Thank you, everyone.
So you're
What's
looking like
next?
you want to say something.
Nope, I'm still just processing it and trying to figure out how you're going to do it. It's not my problem for you to figure out how it's going to get done, but it is very complicated.
Thanks, Cy. I
Yep.
thought so too.
Well, the good news is that since I did the asset capitalization, I have a really good understanding of the behind the scenes workings of all this. So I actually do know exactly how I'm going to do it, and it's fine.
Excellent, excellent.
Then I feel better.
Okay. Anything else on your chair report, Steve?
No, ma'am, it's off to
That
you.
was- yeah. Okay, great. So executive director report. So I've been busy. So there's a couple things that I'm working on right now, which are no surprise because they were similar to the last meeting. So working on preparations for the audit in the background. And in relation to that, Lynn sent me some draft wording for an RFP for audit services, not for this year, but for following years. So Lynn, I've been working on that actually today, because there's another RFP that we also need to issue around the services that basically the consumer handholding, if you will, for the affordable long drop program, whenever that kicks off. So I'm working on an RFP for that as well, and then the results of that I'll bring back to you guys to be awarded when we get them in. And so the other thing that I've been spending a lot of time on is getting ready for the launch of these affordability programs, working with London Middlebury on a whole whack of things, everything from landing pages on the website to including a newsletter to press release to automation emails to a one pager that we can distribute, to working with CVOEO to, on the final details of getting the consumers that are receiving, that we've grandfathered into ACP, getting revalidated. So I've been working on that a lot. And yeah, I think I've also been working with VCB staff on the grants agreement scope of work. So we are this close to getting that finalized and signed, just really into the final details of the wording. So it's kind of taken a long time, but I'm of the opinion that we really can't wait any longer. We need to launch these things, because we have our end of month newsletter. I don't want to lose that opportunity. So gonna go ahead and launch them. And because the LEAF program we already have funded, and the grant program, I think the chance it's going to go away is about zero. And now that I'm at the point of having agreement in principle with VCBB staff on all of the details, just a matter of the wording of the details, I no longer have concerns that what we're saying we're going to do and what will actually have our grant agreement obligate us to do will be different. So that has been the main things I've been working on and am still working on.
Has the VCBB stopped saying don't advertise it until you have your grant agreement?
They haven't said that. That was our policy.
Okay.
I mean, they even said some other CDs have gone ahead and launched from What's Wrong With You.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I'm thinking, okay, well, on the one hand, I don't like being told that we should get out ahead of our actual ability to guarantee that we pay.
Right.
And a couple of weeks ago, I was like, but now, number one, the clock has moved a month further, and number two, as I said, we have the wording, which is pretty much down. We just need to get it into an agreement and sign it. Steve.
Yeah, I think the other benefit to the way Ellie's doing it is other CUDs and other organizations are doing it now, and Ellie's she's got her finger on the pulse here. She's the head of Vacuda. She's the chair for Vacuda. She knows what's going on with them. She knows what's working and what isn't working. And so the fact that we're delaying doing it for a couple months, which is what we're doing, she's gathering all these lessons learned associated with what they did wrong. So
Yep.
To me, go.
Yeah. I mean, having said that, I'm now ready to launch it publicly, and I will be doing that because number one, it works out, and that we're at the end of the month. And then number two, it also happens that Thursday is the Vacuda Day at the legislature. And since I'll be there anyway, what better timing than to say, hey, we're today announcing the launch of these affordability programs. So it's a good press. It's a good opportunity for press for both us and Vacuda. So, and I feel like the risk is minimal.
Good.
So, yeah. So that is that. I feel like I'm missing something. Oh, the thing was the Vacuda Day at the legislature. So I've also been doing a lot of work for Vacuda Day at the legislature, and I have some cool visuals that I will show when I get to the Vacuda update in 7B. So that is it for my executive director report. Any questions? or concerns? Tomatoes? Okay, great. So moving on, the next item in the agenda is the 2025 audit. And so I'm just putting this here, not that we necessarily have too much to update, but I wanted to keep it on our key discussions until we actually get to the point of having it done. So I have been working on the asset capitalization, and I wanted to report that since we last met, I have received there's two things we needed from WCVT to be, actually there's three things we needed. One of which was a field review of the Leicester cabinets, and in order to confirm the year-end inventory count, we needed the year-end inventory counts, and then we also needed the quarterly miscellaneous billing for things like the 800 number and the inventory services and so on and so forth from WCVT for the fourth quarter. So last week we got all of the things that we wanted. So I now have all that information, and the ball's in my court to do my thing and get that over to Darlene along with the asset capitalization and a couple other things we're working on. So that's my update. Lynn, is there anything you wanted to say or anything I'm not thinking of?
I don't think so, Ellie. I think, you were waiting for those things. We have them. And Darlene is sort of standing by to do the journal entries for that capitalization. And we've been in touch with Bonnie, and we have a start date for the audit with Bonnie, which is a good thing. And then I don't know if you've shared this or not, Ellie, about us being under the $1 million mark.
No, I haven't. So TBD, but as it looks right now, there's a threshold of federal expenditures above which you trigger what's called the single audit. And we've had single audits our last couple of years because we've been over the threshold. And the threshold was just raised from $750,000 to $1 million. And it looks like we were just under $1 million, like $25,000 under. So we still need to make sure that we have, all of the final invoices we might charge to this grant. But if that's the case, that's cool because it's going to be a little bit of an easier and cheaper audit.
Mm-hmm.
Like I did not do that on purpose, but it's just it's the side effect of having held up so much of our ARPA expenditure while we were waiting on BEAD, plus some delays with construction and splicing. So it's a happy accident if it does wind up the correct side of $1 million.
Mm-hmm. That's it from me.
Cool. Anything from any of you guys? We'll obviously keep you posted as we start to get closer to things. I think, Lynn, something that you and I should think about, I haven't really yet, is at what point we want to involve the finance committee in this. Obviously, they review the draft audit, but if we want to involve them in any way before we submit the trial balance, I haven't applied my mind to that at all. So maybe if you could think about it a little bit, we can see.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to think about that. And yeah, I'll think about that and maybe we can set up a time to talk.
Sounds good.
All right.
Yep. Yeah. I'm pretty busy through Thursday because of Montpelier. So Thursday's the day in Montpelier, and then Wednesday's meetings and travel and whatnot.
Yeah.
So yeah, but from Friday I'm pretty free.
Okay.
Oh,
that sounds good. Thank you.
All right. So that's that. And then 6B affordability programs. I guess I talked about a lot of this in my executive director reports. But yeah, I'm really excited to launch those two to get our two people receiving the subsidy revalidated. And that part in particular, so again, there's two programs we're launching at once. There's the LEAF program, and then there is the long drop program. And the long drop program, we're really now gathering customer interest in order to be able to inform an RFP for construction services and try and break ground in April. So, which just given where we are now with gathering customer interest, April, or yeah, like probably mid-April seems reasonable for that. So those are the two things. And as I said already, I'm going to be bringing back to this group for procurement selection a services firm to help with the customer communication and coordination of these drops, because there's a limited period of time. And as we all know, it's challenging enough as it is. And when we're now involving a contractor to dig up the lawn and put in conduit and get customers to sign agreements that are specific to their property, it's going to take a little bit more time and more coordination. So we want to make sure that balls don't get dropped. It's definitely above and beyond what WCVT typically does. So we need to make sure that we have someone that's able to be doing that and responsive to doing that. Okay. That's all I have in affordability programs. Okay. So 7A is Finance Committee. It has not met since the last time. I thought I'd just put that in parentheticals as part of the agenda so we could tell if it's met or not met. So hasn't met. We have just been talking. We will definitely be including the Finance Committee around the audit when the time has come, as well as reviewing the audit RFP, because that's going to be issued at some point. Not super urgently, but we don't want to sit on it either. We don't want to be issuing that in August. Okay, so Vacuda updates. So yeah, as I said, we're at the legislature. So there's two big things going on with Vacuda right now. One is the legislative day, and then the other is we received some capacity building funding from the VCBB under a grant called SPICES, which stands for something about, I don't even know what it stands for. Anyway, a SPICES grant. So we have a couple $100,000 left in that, and we're trying to figure out how to spend it. So Vacuda members went through an ideation and voting process last year, and we're now scoping and had a really exciting meeting earlier today where we agreed that the next step for, so of the 5, there's 3 that we've identified as being kind of low-hanging fruit to be able to move forward quickly. And so we are going to be taking those and making the first scope of what we're looking for, someone to help us refine the scope of what we're looking for, if you will. So, because essentially what we're looking for these things is an expert to help us evaluate all the different options on the playing field and narrow in on what actually makes sense. So those 3 things that rose to the top of the list. One is benefits coordination and seeing how we might, is it possible to pool CUDs together to be able to get more cost-effective rates for benefits? One of them is evaluation of whether or how it could be possible to add a mobile cellular offering onto our fixed broadband offering, and if so, what that would look like and how it would cost. And then the third one is consumer education around voice over IP telephone services and what it means the copper is going away, and what about batteries, and but really just kind of understanding like the whole state of, again, starting with what do consumers need to know, and then trying to figure out what could be communicated in our role as consumer advocates and not just service providers. So those are the 3. So obviously, as those get further refined, I'll keep you guys posted about those. And then I wanted to share something that that's Vacuda we worked on. I don't know why this PDF is doing this. Hang on one second. Okay. All right. So one of the things, we're making some posters to bring to the legislature, and one of the posters we have is showing the difference in broadband coverage in the state of Vermont between 2021, which is when Act 71 of 2021 was passed, and that was what created the VCB and created the Vermont Community Broadband Fund that has given us our pre-construction and construction, and where we are now in 2026. So this is the 2021 poster, and so this shows Addison County here, and we took the coloring from the PSD cable map, or the PSD maps online. So the blue is where there was fiber, the green is where there was cable, and then gray is where there were roads that had neither fiber nor cable. So that's 2021. 2026 or end of 2025, as you all know, looks very different. Here's what it looks like. Look at that.
Nice.
Isn't that an amazing difference?
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
Do that again, Ellie.
Right? So I should also say we have the shape files that resulted from this. And so one of the things I'm also going to do is to get those onto London Middlebury so we can, so Vacuda is going to put up an interactive map on its website, but obviously all the CDs are going to get, extract this data to put up on our own websites and put up on our own marketing materials. So that'll probably be for February, just given where we are now with January. But it's such a cool story because, again, like this is where we were to start. As you can see, as we all know, like there was a little bit of fiber here, a little bit of fiber here, and now like roads that have active fiber service. Now, we haven't done all that, and neither has Waitsfield, but the fact that we exist and got our grants, we all know that is what moved things like building out, portions of GoNetspeed towns and building out portions of Middlebury by GoNetspeed and Consolidated. It just moved it up their priority queue because the opportunity cost of being second to market changed the dynamics. So, indirectly as a result of us being here, people have gotten fiber service faster than would otherwise have been. That's basically the story statewide, and it's the story in our district. So, we have either built or, spurred to be built a massive change in broadband since 2021. So like,
Nice.
what a cool success story. And that's part of the message of the legislature is like, it is working, has worked, job is not yet done, right? And that's where BEAD is going to help us get to the ends of these, last miles of roads here that don't have service. But it's a big jump, and it's kind of cold comfort to people that are still dealing with lousy DSL, especially when most of their neighbors don't have lousy DSL anymore. But we want to get to them as fast as we can, and that's why BEAD is going to get us closer to the finish line. Or in our case, it's going to get us to the finish line. So isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again,
Ellie, would you send either me or Hannah that data too when you do it?
absolutely.
That would be great.
I will happily share it. Yep, send you the shape
It's a great
files. You can
story.
do with them what you will. Yeah, so there we go. Some happiness for a Monday afternoon. Okay. VCBB update. What has the VCBB been doing? Well, they've been working on the long drop grant. That's good. That's positive. We don't have it yet, but I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And there is still no word on BEAD. I mean, that's going into 7D a little bit, but there's still no. Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, I took a quick look, and there's the quantity of entities that have not been awarded by NTIA has dropped a bit. So there's now 14 of us, states and other entities that have not yet been awarded BEAD. So it's getting skinny list. They reported on it at the last VCBB meeting too. We're all just waiting.
Steve, is there a political pattern to it?
The only thing that was mentioned that is not, I don't think, related to it is that there was a suggestion that they get released in batches. And I'm not sure what would drive that. But I think the thought had been that it's not just going to, when we get awarded, we may have some other companion states and entities that will also receive the award. But I think politically, it comes from Washington. Your guess is as good as mine.
Yep.
Well, if it's come from Washington, I'm not guessing at all. Go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think further speculation is going to serve us here. So
No.
I'm going to move the conversation on.
Okay.
Okay, so the next item then is BEAD and detailed design. So as we know, there's no official word on BEAD, but we are continuing to move forward, presuming that the BEAD awards continues at pace. So one of the things I'm going to do once I finish up with the work I'm doing now in the audit and the affordability programs launch is to start to have a look in more detail at identifying all the different permits and digging myself into the NEPA process. The one thing I did want to say about BEAD, in case it escapes my head, is that in order for the state of Vermont to get its BEAD award, which is a prerequisite for us getting our BEAD awards, it not only needs approval from the NTIA, but it also needs approval from NIST, which is the National Institute for Standards and something. Anyway, so the NIST approval is, so first NTIA approves and then NIST has to have a look. And what they're looking at is they're looking at the administrative processes for the people at, in the VCB and in the Public Service Department that are keeping track of grant agreements and grant funds and basically making sure that the capacity exists within the state to be able to disperse the funds properly, which hopefully should be not that big of an issue because the VCB has been around for years and they know how to process and issue invoices. Having said that, I have no idea what NIST actually entails, but just wanted to let you guys know that we'll celebrate when we get the NTIA approval, but then we are still, like, we can't be sitting here saying, why do we have no grant agreement? Because the state of Vermont can't give us a grant agreement until they get their NIST approval. But we as Rakuta have also been working with the VCB staff to start to work on the draft, to give them some suggestions on the draft sub-grantee agreements, which again, it's not like we're not exactly negotiating this with them because that's not our role, right? It's their, they're the sub-grantee, it's their agreement, but nonetheless, we've offered some commentary that we think would be better for all sub-recipients and in some cases better for them as the grant administrator as well. So that process is also happening because at some point we will get a grant agreement. And so we're just trying to offer some constructive feedback on that grant agreement. And the detailed design. Oh, sorry, Steve. Yep.
Well, I was going to just jump in here. So as part of the process, your approval earlier of the Calyx hardware process helps a lot. And as a result of the detail that we received from JSI, I'm also able to now begin communication with Clearfield, which is the manufacturer of our hub cabinets. And there's nothing standing in the way of doing this. Again, the objective, I think, Ellie and my shared objective is to do everything you possibly do without spending a penny. I think that's basically the approach. So what we're doing is we're going to get, I'm working with the Calix or with Clearfield to get the engineering done on the cabinets, and they will provide specifications for what will be compatible with our expectations, our needs. And then that will go into an RFP, and we will not issue the RFP until we are in the clear to do so. So again, it's one more box that we're checking, getting all the things we need. I think one thing I'm thinking about, Ellie, and I don't know how we want to attack it. We haven't really broached this with GSI about at what point will we know what the cable lengths and strand counts will want to prepare to order. I don't know. I think, is that a detailed design item thing, do you think? Yeah, all right.
Actually, came up in the last call. It is, because if you recall, we made the mistake of ordering based on the high-level design of Vantage Point, only to find out that we ordered way more 24 than we'll ever need and a lot less 72 than we'll need. So we ain't making that mistake again. So we will wait for the detailed design to be finished. And because this is also something that I was picking on, because I was trying to understand, as we talked about the last time, what's going to be the timing. I'm trying to figure out like the sequence of, I mean, not just how we're going to pay for things, but the sequence of, given that we can't start BEAD until we can start BEAD, and given that ARPA money is going to go away if we don't spend it, I got a little bit of like trying to figure out how these puzzle pieces are all going to come together kind of story in my head. And so one of the things bits of data that I was trying to gather to inform that is, when are we going to be able to put this work out to bid? Because we want one contractor, with one crew and one bucket truck, to like go up and like, put up, here's the transport fiber for BEAD, the middle mile, and then, same truck, separate reel of cable, separate bill, here's the distribution fiber and the splicing that gets charged to another grant. So we want that done once, because that's going to be cheaper and more efficient. Otherwise, like what the heck is the point of trying to do it together, right? You don't have those economies if you're going to have to send people out to climb up the same poles twice. So I wanted to understand when we're going to be able to put BEAD out to bid, because that's when we're going to be able to put everything out to bid.
Yeah.
Steve?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about all the interconnections. I believe the Gantt chart says detailed designs done around April. Do you think? Does that sound about right?
It's early April, and it's the unit price sheets that's what we need, because we don't need the legal agreements that's going to be attached to put out the RFP, but we need the quantities. That's going to say like how many feet of this unit do we need.
All right, and so April triggers a variety of things that we can do or we need to do. So I guess we'll just have to track that. But again, it's all hinging on BEAD. So
yeah, I was about to make a joke about requesting 2 weeks of vacation in April, but I'm actually not. So I'm not going to joke about that. Anyway, yeah. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, Steve and I we've been, speaking for myself at least, I've been really enjoying working with JSI just in general. Their level of engineering competence and diligence, and questioning our assumptions, and taking our feedback from the school fees we've learned. They have really just been a pleasure to work with.
Great.
So very, very pleased.
Great.
Anything you want to add to that, Steve?
No. They're doing a good job. They're very responsive. They do what they say they're going to do. There's cases where it's working out well. I think of things that I need to ask about, and like today, I asked them for a breakdown of BEAD addresses by broken down by Bripton and Middlebury, and so I can figure out how to reconfigure the Calix hardware. I asked them for it this morning at about 9 o'clock, and I got a spreadsheet from them. It's got some engineering in it. It apparently came from their high-level design, and it's got everything I need. Everything. It's just amazing. So they turned it around in like 2 hours.
Yeah. Well, it's good. I was pretty sure that they had the source data available when Steve and I spoke, and turns out I was right. They couldn't have done that quickly if they hadn't. Another thing, just to show how flexible they were being, and I mean, of course, for this we're paying them hourly, but it's just a good example of their flexibility. Is because we have existing detailed designs for vantage points, and they're working on the actual staking sheets that the construction crew needs to take out into the field. And I suggested that because they showed us samples of what theirs looked like, and I said, since we're going to have the same crews building Ferrisburg using the vantage point design and Middlebury using your design, can we make the symbols as consistent as possible? Because it's going to be that much easier if a splice case is the same shape, whether it's in this design or that design. And they said, with pleasure, yes, we can do that.
Is that sorted out yet, Ellie? I know you guys have been going back and forth with them. Do they still have more work to do there?
I don't know. They had some questions on like Thursday afternoon or Friday. I get my days mixed up about. They had some questions about the Vantage Point key that we sent them, and I answered them. And there's a mail that I have not looked at that's come in because I've been in meetings for the last few hours. So,
Okay.
but yeah. So anyway, they're great. I'm happy. No complaints. We've been so lucky in general with our service providers.
Yeah, we learned the hard way. We learned, actually, you know what? Vantage Point wasn't terrible. I think they were probably the good engineering firm for people that were greenhorns. You know, we didn't know anything. We had a lot of stuff we did to figure out. They helped us make all our mistakes and get them out of the way. But JSI is, if we were building out more than just Addison County, I would continue to engage them.
Yep, I would as well. I would definitely want to work with them again in future. Okay, so moving on to 2025 construction updates. So as you know, there were some line extensions that we built last year, and Syracuse's splicer spliced them and tested them, and then the bottom line is right now Jason gave permission is going back with Syracuse because there's a bunch of addresses that, according to him and I, should have been spliced, and they weren't on the list, and he's trying to figure out what's going on with that. So we're trying to just figure out the implications of, like, for example, there was 8 addresses on a spur off, like the Watchpoint Road, like west towards the lake. There's 8 addresses on that, and only one of them showed up in the test reports. So it doesn't make sense. It's like, some information maybe got lost between the splicer and Mission Broadband who's overseeing. So we're just trying to trace that down, but those line extensions will be put live as soon as we actually have all the test results for them and can put them live. And the 3 miles by the ferry, that was built already, and Green Mountain Power actually a little bit of a giggle to us because the Syracuse crews were up there hanging stranded cable within like a day of when GMP gave us the go-ahead. So the guys were like, yeah, you really were eager. And I said, yes, I've been telling you for a long time, we're eager to get that built. Thank you. And then the splicer was meant to come back this week to splice that. So if there's anything that was somehow missed in the other line extensions, we'll be able to catch it all at the same time. So the only thing which is outstanding, really, other than just getting that finished and getting it validated and turned up, is we are waiting for the weather to warm up so we can do the railroad bore in Tupper's Crossing and Plank Road. And that, we want to get that done because we want to get that done and we have some customers we want to serve. But even without that, the line extensions plus the 3 miles by the ferry is going to put us over the top of our construction grant obligations. So I have already spoken to VCBB about that to give them the heads up. And so I'm excited about that because it would be great to be able to close out formally our formal obligations under that grant and, announce that as a win to our stakeholders and just, have that be done. So moving forward. Maybe not quite as fast as I want, but you have to give people a little bit of credit for the weather. It's been really cold, really snowy. There's some areas they weren't able to get to due to the snow and the ice. That, is what it is. Anything you want to add to that, Steve? You've been in pretty much all those meetings too.
Yep. Oh, good.
Okay, great. Parking lot. There's one thing that Steve and I would like to add to the parking lot, the subject of field labeling of assets like pedestals, and we put in some utility poles. The pedestals, I'm quite sure we don't have labeled. The utility poles we put in a couple places down in Shoreham. I can't recall if we labeled, and if we didn't, then we should label them so that if they get damaged, people know that they're, at least arguably, we should label them. So people know who to call if it gets hit by a truck and we need to replace it. So this is not a high priority item in any stretch of the imagination. These assets have been in the field for a while, but Steve and I had a little chat that before we go put more pedestals in particular into the field for bead, and there's a lot of buried sections in bead, we should figure out if we're going to label them, and if we are going to label them, what the details are, and make sure that we have all that bedded down. So I want to put that in the parking lot so that we had a place we could reference it and not forget, because it is important, but it's not especially time critical. Steve.
Yeah, I think that the trick there is that we need to get this all sorted out conclusively before we start doing more build. And so what that means is, what's the label look like, and then how do we label things? And in particular, there's three flavors. There's pedestals that are out there in the field that are that should be labeled. They're part of our overall high-level network. There's also poles, and these are all assets. We own them. There's a lot of those pedestals that aren't serving the network, but there's some. And so the other one is, when we start doing bead work, our contractor is going to be using pedestals that we have staged in Waitsfield. And I think there's quite a few of them. I think there's 20 or 30 of them. So they need to be labeled before they get deployed. So the trick as well is, we need to figure out what we're going to do, and then we need to do it before we start building. And so that's the time I want to put on it. And you know what, Ellie, maybe we need to say the deadline is April to have that sorted out and resolved. Okay, great.
Sure. Yeah, we'll put that in as like aiming for April.
Yeah, at least I think that, because I already came up with what I thought would work, but you know, we can socialize it with you guys and you know, do what's needed. My overall thought had been, we're not talking about 500 points that we need to label. Stuff that's out in the field, I would say, is probably less than 50. But you know, it's not a lot, and we can send your chair to go out and do that stuff. So it should be no problem.
Yep. So going over other items on the parking lot, Shannon has sent me a revised draft personnel policy. And Shannon, sorry I didn't reply to your mail yet, but when would you guys like feedback on that?
We want it sorted in time before May, so we can vote on it.
That sounds good. So
we probably also need the executive committee to approve it before it goes to the governing board, right? Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
Yeah. There's just some open questions that I wanted Ellie's feedback on, and then we can finalize it and get it in front of everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So I will get to that as soon as I can. I just want to, my top two things is the affordability launch and the audit. So when those things are not having me as the critical path, then I'll get to that if that works. Okay. Yeah, and then also network management agreement. That one is also, Eileen has given some information over, and so Steve and I spoke of that with Roger this morning. So we're continuing to work it, but same thing. I need to get through the affordability launch and the audit, and then move on to these other items.
Yeah, this has been probably close to 2 years in the works now, Ellie. Can we give it a deadline? It feels like it keeps getting kicked down the road because there's other things more important. I don't know. It's like in the network management agreement, it's pretty darn important. So any way we can give ourselves the deadline and try to stick to it. I mean, originally my suggestion had been grant money from Maple Broadband to WCVT would not be sent until it's signed, but I don't know.
I don't think we're going to get a BEAD agreement before this summer.
We could I tied it to it before when you and I spoke with Roger, and I could just repeat it. I mean, that's we're thinking May, or think even later than that, June.
Well, I mean, we're very close to agreement in principle. It's just I can only work on so many things at once. I mean, if you would like me to prioritize this over the audit, I can do that. But I just, like in my head, I want to go through and to make sure that I'm not trying to sign up to do too many things all in the same time frame. But I think this is, I mean, if I think about things after the audit, I mean, unless there's something, well, there'll probably be some operational things with long drop, but it's like this, this is next tier of priority.
Okay. I also wanted to point out items 10 and 11 in the parking lot. I'm thinking they can either be removed or somebody needs to launch something.
Yeah, well, 10 is fiber overbuild public facing guideline. You know, this is something that I think we should actually talk about as part of how do we spend the remaining ARPA money.
So we want to change that as a super high level policy, Ellie. I don't know that it would be impacted by decisions like that, but I mean, we can go ahead.
Well, I mean, we have to decide what we're going to do, and then the second thing is we have to make sure that we have a public statement or public policy that talks about what we're going to do. So we need, for example, to figure out with the remaining ARPA money, do we build, I mean, not that it's necessarily this simple, and not say that we couldn't maybe do both or bits of both, but do we build buried parts of Virgins or Middlebury that only have Comcast, or do we build Ariel and Virgins to compete with, Ariel and Middlebury to compete with Fidium? I mean, that's a choice we're going to have to make, and either choice we make, we are going to have to write it down and communicate to the public in case we get dissatisfied constituents.
So the status is wrong then. We approved it and it was going to be posted, but we're going to rescind it and we're going to continue to work on it.
It actually might be whatever we currently have might well be on the new website, because we have a policies folder, so I can check and put it on the current website, what we've published now.
Yeah, I mean, if we need to continue to process it, we need to leave it up there for sure.
Yeah, I think probably the status is wrong, so I can make sure that it's on the website, and then I think we are going to need to revisit it once we figure out what to do with the remaining ARPA money.
Okay, how about 11?
This one we still need to think about what we want to do.
I thought it was just simply a VCBB policy and we're just going to recap it and put it up on our website. No?
The VCBB policy says that we will have a policy for consumers who want to complain to us. And
Ooh.
And I mean, so it's a policy, and I mean, this is a public meeting, so I suppose we're, you know, we since we don't have this now, we're technically out of bounds of the VCB's policy. Having said that, I don't feel like it's a high priority compared to everything else. I think if we had really unhappy customers, we'd know. Having said that, for all we know, people who are churning because they're unhappy with something, and we haven't given them a facility to tell us. And so I do think it's something we should do, but again, it's kind of doesn't seem like the top priority in relation to some of these other things.
So we probably want to just change the status in that one too, right? Because it looks like it's done. And it looks like we're posting it. So I honestly, if you just want to just, you know, rewrite it so that we need more time on it. I like the fact that it's a low urgency. I think that's perfect.
Yep, I'll fix that.
And I also think that the fiber overbuild is low priority. Absolutely.
Yeah, and then number 13, selling excess 24 count cable, that is something that I can take up once we have the detailed design done.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Okay. To be addressed post detailed design.
Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? Let me go back to 10. What are we going to just delete 10, or are we going to change the status?
I'm going to take an action item to post on the check if the policy is on the website, and if it is not, then I'll post it, and then I will revise this to remain on here to be reviewed once we figure out how we spend the rest of the ARPA money.
Perfect. Yeah, if you mention ARPA and stuff, just to make sure we're on track. Great. Excellent.
Yep. Okay. Yep. And then the audit RFP is we're working on.
Yeah. Lynn said February, so you can see maybe March.
Yeah, I think it sort of depends on. I mean, I think it's more important for us to work on getting our 25 audit done than to get our 26 audit RFP out. Having said that, when we're meeting with Finance Committee, we're going to want to be respectful of their time and not calling a meeting to talk about one thing and then calling a meeting a week later to talk about the audit RFP.
Yeah.
So
I agree, Ellie. And I think that February is really just to keep us on task.
Yep.
Because we don't want to miss that window to send it out. And it just seems silly to let it slip and then to have this very tight timeline to have people turn around and ask questions and then to submit a quote. So I think at least having a draft to take to the next finance committee would be a good thing. And that can be in February sometime, maybe even late February.
Yep, I think that works. Okay, anything else on the parking lot? Okay. Is there anything, I don't have any other updates. Is there any other business? Okay. Hearing none, I think we can adjourn. Our next meeting is 2 weeks from today, which is February 9th. Is that right? Yes. February 9th.
And so one of the items on the agenda for that will be talking about attendance, governing board attendance, so that we can present something to the governing board just a few days later.
Yep, and the part of the governing board pack that I'm going to distribute on Friday the 6th is going to have that as an agenda item.
Excellent.
Okay. All right. Well, if there's nothing further, I think I can let you guys go and get another 20 minutes back in your day, and I will see you in 2 weeks' time or sooner, depending on how things go. All right. Thank you all. Have a
Thank
good
you.
one.
Bye.
Okay.